I have two questions about cybersecurity. The first one is about the presentation. There's the table about the security dilemma. You said that the security dilemma lies when it's hard to distinguish intent and offensive. But also afterwards, you talked about how hard most of the times it is to detect who's the attacker. So, for example, you gave at the beginning of the presentation how the US accused North Korea of the WannaCry. But in that case, it's easy to distinguish intent, but at the same time, it's more problematic because you're not really sure. You're just sure of the intent itself because of political reasons between the countries. But it's more problematic because you're not really sure about it, but the intent is so easy to detect. I have another question about containers. I recently read an article that containers are now hackers' dreams, but I didn't get quite the concept. What do containers really mean? They were speaking about data and containers. Containers. No. And something in programming called containers. You know, okay.
So I'm not sure I understand the first question. I mean, I think the North Korea WannaCry example underscores the difficulty in determining intent, and as well as the difficulty of determining attribution, but are you saying that the security dilemma requires you to be able to attribute? Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying because for North Korea, sometimes it's kind of obvious that the US would accuse either Russia, North Korea, or China.
Oh,
so here it's easy to distinguish intent, but it's really difficult to prove the action. So this imposes a more problematic dilemma.
well, I think in the WannaCry case, the intent is not clear either. I don't think there's anything clear about why would North Korea want to attack almost indiscriminately countries throughout Europe that didn't have patched Windows 7, I think. What was it? Was it Windows? What would they get from that? But that sounds, I mean, I see that as being almost irrational from their point of view, that they would, if indeed they did it, which I'm not convinced of, but if they did it, then they would be demonstrating a capability that would allow people to defend against them. They got nothing from it. They didn't get money from it. They didn't get more power from it. They certainly didn't weaken the resolve of any of their enemies to deal with them. If anything, they antagonized them even more. So that's what's so puzzling about the attribution to North Korea is, I mean, why did they do that? If they did it, why would they do that? I don't get it. But the point of the security dilemma is that you have an unstable situation of constant instability and possible escalation because of these two things, the offensive advantage and the difficulty of determining the intent of the actor. And both of those are present in spades or it's an idiom, both of those are extremely strongly present in cybersecurity. That's the only point I'm making. I'm not sure that answers your question.
Before going on with the other questions, I would like to ask, is there anyone who didn't write his or her name to the list for tomorrow's speaker? And who would you like to add? Yeah, we should. I will hand. Okay, fine. So they can write
different to today's dinner, by the way. So just write your name at the back, maybe. So just at the back.
No, no, it's
Here?
Find your name, no different way.
if it's
Oh,
not
okay.
on the list, you
Okay.
can just.
So will there be a separate list for tomorrow's dinner, or is it the same
It's the
list
same
for
list actually
the
for
same
both.
list
Yeah.
for both? Because I will join one, not join another.
Sure. It's up to you. It's your
Okay,
question.
thank you. Dr. Miller, thank you for your presentation. You summarized us what's going on regarding international cybersecurity, regarding cybersecurity at the international level. But what is your personal opinion about the idea of having an international treaty on cybersecurity? Do you support or not? Thank you.
Yeah, I think an international treaty is likely to be ineffective given the tensions between the sort of cyber superpowers, and that, again, given the difficulties of, monitoring actual capabilities, and the fact that states are still in a state of anarchy with respect to each other. They all have sovereignty, they can act, nobody's going to punish them except maybe another state going to war with them. I think the ability for a treaty, a formal treaty, to accomplish anything here is very limited. I'm not against it in the same way that the US is. In other words, if I thought it could be effective, I would be in favor of it. But I just don't see how it would be effective.
Yes.
I just want to answer her question. I don't know if I can answer you, but container in programming is an abstract data type. It's a data structure actually, which is kind of a class, and all instances of other objects can be included in container. And if a hacker could access the container, he or she might be able to access all the authorization components and functionalities, so he or she would be able to access all the system functionalities. I hope I'm right.
My question is in regard with the nation-backed attacks. To be frank, if the attack is to be proven to be done by an intelligence agency or a nation's government, for example, if it would have been proved that Stuxnet was or WannaCry or Flame virus was done by a government, is there any regulatory authority within the structure of the United Nations to do something about this? Or would it have some consequences for that government?
Well, that's a good question. And again, it runs into the same problem with all of these international agreements. Suppose that we had that independent attribution organization, and it did decide, issued a ruling that North Korea was responsible for WannaCry. Then states have basically the same set of options that they have now in regards to their nuclear weapons things, which is to say, they can use sanctions, they can put economic pressure on them, and they can threaten to attack them, essentially. One of the things about the law of armed conflict is that it emphasizes proportionality in response. So if you invaded my border by this much and shot one person, I don't get to nuke your entire major city, right? So that's the proportionality argument, and ideally the states who were responding to North Korea would have to come up with a proportional response. But again, you're just dealing with the inherent anarchy of the sovereign state system. There's no true policing function other than what all states can agree on to do. Yeah.
Any other questions? You don't have to ask just about cybersecurity, if you can ask about anything else. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. My question is not about cybersecurity. In the first day, in your presentation, you talked about IGF, and you said that you could talk more, but we didn't have time. Maybe if you like, we will be happy to hear your views on IGF, how it should be improved, or what is it? Thank you.
Well, at the origin of the IGF, there was a debate between people who wanted a strong, let's say, what did I call them in the book? The hawks and the doves, the strong IGF and the weak IGF. By the way, I'm going to embarrass the Internet Society if they're still here. Internet Society was against the IGF. They were against forming it, and then they became big supporters of it once it became clear that it would not make any decisions. And that was a consistent position for them. The reason they were against it was that they thought that it would try to turn into some centralized internet governance agency, right? Which is a threat that I think we all have to watch out for if it were actually a real threat. Now, so the people in civil society wanted the IGF to be like the IETF for internet governance. They would have a bottom-up process and develop some kind of recommendations based on consensus, or rough consensus, depending on how you define that. And then that would be some kind of substantive recommendation that would be set out. Obviously, it would have no binding power. It would not have a police force to back it up. It would not be an international treaty, but it would be like the IGF thinks this should happen. And the US Internet Society business interests were very, very strongly against this. Now, what happened over time is that when it became clear that the people who didn't want the IGF to develop any recommendations were winning, some of the states began to get disillusioned with that, and that's when you start seeing things like the more emphasis on the Enhanced Cooperation Group, the UN Committee on Internet-Related Policies. You see the states basically searching for UN-based alternatives. The ITU sets up its alternative to the IGF, which is called the WSIS Forum. And you see kind of a dissipation of the energy. Well, I still think the IGF is a very energetic and interesting place, but the states, in particular governments, are not putting much hopes in it. And so it becomes more and more a forum for civil society, where we kind of control the dialogue, and most of the workshop proposals are coming from civil society. So there's a danger that the IGF will become unbalanced, and then once it's seen as just civil society, then maybe we'll start losing the private sector and as well as governments. In some ways, this is an expected product of the lack of outcomes. If you are not really going to accomplish your diplomatic objectives within the IGF, why should you continue participating? On the other hand, if you do turn it into a diplomatic negotiation type struggle between governments, then civil society and business are going to get turned off. So it's a very delicate balance that the IGS has to face.
Any other questions?
Okay, I read once a study, a finding for the study by Oxford Internet Institute on bots, that Trump in the recent presidential elections in the US, that he used bots more than Hillary Clinton. And there are, although there are some, like, lots of studies that are supporting the idea that politicians are using bots, I didn't see, or I didn't hear, I don't know, that there are somehow we can inform the public that when they read a tweet or when they read a comment on Facebook, that watch out, this is a bot. There's any way, or there's any one thinking of like flagging bots, because they are detectable, they are somehow we can detect bots. What's happening in this area? Thank you.
The question is, what's happening in this area of sort of flagging bots? Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I think I do know that in the general framework of the way internet governance is currently constructed, the pressure is coming on the private intermediaries. So if Twitter, for example, decides that its reputation as a useful platform is being undermined by these bots, they will take certain kinds of actions. And the same goes for Facebook, and to some extent, Google has been battling fake, well, let's call it search engine optimization, tricks that you can play to get yourself up in the rankings of Google. And that's, I view that as the precursor to the so-called fake news controversy, in that you have a kind of an automated gaming of the communication system. And search engine optimization people were trying to do this, and then Google would adjust its algorithm to compensate for that, and when they learned of it, and they thought it was really distorting the results. So I see most of the pressure for taking action in that way devolving to the private sector intermediaries whose reputation depends on how they handle this problem.
For those of you on the WhatsApp group, remember I sent around that thing that Facebook has changed its privacy conditions over the years quite dramatically, and that was only up to 2010, I think it was. So I would wonder if there's not an economic incentive for the platforms to do this. I'm not entirely sure that they're going to particularly act. They've not shown themselves to be particularly good social actors. That's not an ICANN position, because we think they're great. And so yeah, there are researchers certainly looking at how bots can be detected, and I would have thought that if anybody had a vested interest in sorting this out, it would be the media, the other media, not the social media, but those who are being either conned by it or having their coverage misled or directed by it, and also others in the other side of the political campaign. You both want to know how to utilize the bot, but also how to counter the bots that are being used against you in negative campaigning or whatever it may be. But I think if I were a newspaper or a TV or traditional media, I'd want to know what was going on, because I want those news channels back for myself and take them away from the online platforms.
Computational propaganda and Twitter bots and stuff like that. So I mean, there is a possibility, technically it's possible that you can flag like these Twitter bots or the social media bots. So for example, the bots are in hundreds of thousands or even in millions. So you cannot actually manually detect or maybe flag these bots. For that, obviously, you will need some tools, some applications. Again, making use of the Java containers, which Jinan was asking about. So it is highly likely that these tools, which will actually be used for flagging these bots, they will be compromised. So again, it will be like the fake news detection dilemma, whereby there is a possibility that a tool, or there have been attempts recently that some fake news applications or softwares were being developed, and they themselves were compromised because it is possible that nation states are sponsoring or supporting these. So those applications, for example, there was an attempt by a group which created an application that used to detect fake news. So they, in a live TV show, they tried to detect news of, for example, CNN and Fox News. It showed it's green. It's a reliable source. But at the same time, when they entered sources like Reuters, it said it's red. It's like fake news. News from Reuters are fake. So it's highly likely that these kind of tools or scripts or applications are compromised and stuff like that. So, for example, the computational propaganda and the Twitter bots thing, it's like a couple of years back this research was done. So as of now, as of today, for example, in Turkey we cannot use Wikipedia. It's blocked just because of some issues of some content that is there on Wikipedia. So there have been attempts by some people to change the content on Wikipedia, but the content was again, all of a sudden it gets changed again. So it's again the same, the bots phenomenon. You fix some information or you change it and it gets changed again all of a sudden. So that actually is the bots war that is taking place between on platforms like Twitter or Wikipedia and stuff. Thank you.
Questions? No more questions? Yes, more questions. I'll give it to Nadia first. Just make your comment.
We usually think, or we see, that cybersecurity is only towards affecting the computers itself. Like we have a big examples of banking system was halted, and it was done recently, and back it was when I was in South Korea, it was twice done, and they probably allegated the North Korea, and obviously then we can say that they have the intention of disturbing their banking sector. But in 2016, we have example of that cybersecurity, how it will affect, someone can access the command and control system of any dam. So water security, and then aviation. So it's a lot more than which that will affect the physical world too. So there is an attempt of affecting the water dams and to release their water through controlling through these cyber lapses, the security lapses. They are trying to catch those and control the command and control systems are effective for that. This is one example, and also for aviation. Let's suppose if for a couple of seconds, if any country's aviation system is halted, so this is more than it's going to be more dangerous in coming days.
My question is there a hidden story of choosing the name ICANN? It can be arranged in another thing, but it's, now we have iPhone, iPad. It was arranged to be ICANN because it's an acronym that's a very fascinating one. Thank you.
It really stands for the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. and the I is internet. And even if you look at the other organizations, so you have ISOC, for example, that's the Internet Society. And then you have the IGF, the Internet Governance Forum. Then you have the IETF, which is the Internet Engineering Task Force. So as you can see, the letter I is kind of everywhere now. I guess Apple came with this whole concept of iPhone, iPad, iPod, and all that stuff. Probably it was coincidentally. I don't know, Milton, do you have any perspectives on that?
Well, ICANN was named in 1998, and the iPhone didn't exist until 2007. But there was the iPod, I think, before that. But I think ICANN and the I, with the Apple stuff, it's a small I. And with ICANN, it's simply an acronym, and I think it pretty much is a coincidence. Now we speak of the iStar organizations, right? So, but it really, before I was at Georgia Tech, I was at the Syracuse University Information School, and we renamed ourselves the iSchool in 2004 or 5, and that really was following this Apple-like I pattern. So there is a kind of a trend in that direction, but ICANN can legitimately claim to be preceded that and is not copying anybody. Right?
It's mere coincidence. Yes.
Just to add something, I want to say ICANN is very optimistic word, and anytime I say it, I say I can. But I think because it's a multi-stakeholderism manner, so I wish there was a chance for it to be we can rather than I can. Just this.
So actually, we can is also taken. So we have our internal, is it a wiki space or internal space? So like we have this internal platform which is built on Jive, and it's called WeCan. Yeah, intranet. We have an internal intranet, and it's called WeCan. So, so that's used as well. Ask.
Actually, in this issue, I want to bring a comment from another point of view. ICANN is not, I think, similar from the trademark point of view, and ICANN is not confusingly similar from the trademark point of view with iPhone, iPod, iPad, and other such kind of brands, I think. So I don't see such kind of a relationship from this point of view. I don't know what my colleagues say.
More questions? No more questions? Presentations? Who wants to go first? What's up? Come on. You want to use the mic or do you want to sit down?
Hi, I'm going to give just a short presentation. It's an overview of the .sd, which is the CCTLD for Sudan. So the establishment of .sd back to on 1997, it was firstly registered by a private company, but due to the political instability and civil wars at that time, it died, and not any domain was registered. Then on mid of 2002, an ISOC Sudan chapter requested the IANA for the delegation of .sd, and they had been working on developing a CCTLD management plan, preparing their infrastructure and capabilities, gathering community support to be ready to operate the .sd. So by the end of 2002, the .sd was successfully registered, and the first domain under .sd was registered. From that time, the ISOC Sudan chapter operating.sd, and by now they have about 3,750 domain, and we trying to increase this number by encouraging the local startups hosting to register more domains under .sd. And one thing to add about subdomains, there are about 6 subdomains under .sd, which is .com, .gov, .net, .med, .info, and .edu. The last thing I will talk about is the challenges of .sd, which is, what do you think it is? The challenges, sanctions. Yes. So any domain under .sd, many service providers, they refuse to register any domain .sd, and even you cannot sign up for any service that if you use an email under .sd. So that's the main challenging that currently .sd face, and we are trying again to bypass that by encouraging the local community to make their own hosting and get more websites registered under .sd. So that's what I wanted to say about .sd. Thank you.
Questions about .sd? Questions? Yes.
So the jurisdiction working group of the Workstream 2 and Accountability Workstream 2 of ICANN, sorry, that's a mouthful, isn't it? There's a working group within ICANN that is working on jurisdictional issues, that is addressing the OFAC, the sanctions issues. And I just wondered, there's a couple of things that we're talking about doing, and I wondered how you would react to them. So one, currently ICANN makes no commitment that it will apply for an OFAC license for any of the registries or registrars it contracts with. And we would like for it to make that commitment. Another is we would like to ask the US government to create a general license for domain names, in which case it's not up to ICANN, it's up to more the US government. And is there anything else we could ask for that you think would help this situation?
Maybe
examples? What kind of problems do the sanctions cause to the local domain name industry that are not targeting bad people, they're just targeting everybody in the country trying to use the internet, right? So can you give us examples of how they are actually not helping punish bad people, they are punishing everybody?
How people suffering other than the question again, you mean how people suffering from the sanction other than the hosting? There is many services like the online money transactions. Yes, that's an example.
So for example, all of the services you might expect from a registrar.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So from having availability on a registrar's shopfront, so you won't see .sd as being available.
Yes.
And then you can't buy certificates, so you can't do HTTPS. And
yes. Just overcome the issue.
Are the CCTLDs in the region helping? AFTLD and things like that?
Mhm.
So actually I have some perspective, maybe I can share.
Okay.
So I think the whole issue of .sd goes much beyond, I mean, how the sanctions are affecting the domain name industry. So, I mean, Adam mentioned a couple of really valid points: hosting, other services, online transactions. So first of all, I mean, people from outside of Sudan cannot register .sd domain names. I mean, assuming that they're going to open it to people from the outside world. Hosting outside is not very easy. I mean, in many instances, of course, they don't have credit cards and they can't use international credit cards, so they can't pay online. And then there are some hosting companies that say, no, I mean, you are trying to host an .sd domain with us, and that doesn't, I mean, and we don't accept it because it's hit by OFAC. And in many other instances, it's just that people can't pay online. They do have some arrangements. I mean, I know at least one person who has like special arrangements with other resellers and registrars in Africa, and they kind of do these money transactions in some form or another. But again, it's not helping very much the industry. But I think the overall scheme is that, yeah, the sanctions is affecting everything, and I mean, the domain name industry is just one small aspect of it. But I mean, let's be frank. So in Sudan, they have still not embraced much the whole concept of the digital economy. They have many other issues to deal with, but probably with time, things could change. Do you want to add anything?
Can I start my presentation?
You want to start the presentation?
Yes.
Go ahead. Maybe that could answer more questions. So Milton, I'm quite curious. So this jurisdiction part is talking about just domain names, or does it also involve the root server system?
In principle, it could involve the root server system. It's just not that there's not a clear jurisdiction problem related to root servers, except with regard to the delegation of CCTLDs.
Instances, in terms of instances. So they're unable to deploy instances there.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Thank you. I first would like to introduce myself. I am Muhammad Yusuf Al-Hajj. I have been working as a senior software engineer at the National Telecommunication Corporation in Sudan. It's a regulatory party of telecommunication industry and telecommunication operators in Sudan. And in 2015, I joined Sudan Internet Society as a team lead of the open source and programming. So we have, of course, many problems. Khansa talked about many of them already, but the part of the certificate and the domain names, we actually have been facing this for a very long time, despite having many rules and many laws stating that in the internet world and in the information technology world that you should not you should not discriminate access. This country, everyone should have access to everything on the internet. And it's strange enough that all countries have signed all agreements, but I think there is a problem with the signature of those agreements of some country. I'd like to start by our case. For instance, we have this resolution, the WSIS and WTDC, the resolution number 69 of the World Telecommunication Standardization Assembly. It is stating that non-discriminatory access and the use of internet resources and telecommunication information and communication technologies. Another resolution, number 20 in Hyderabad, it is non-discriminatory access again to modern telecommunication, information and communication technology facilities, service and related applications. The World Telecommunication Development Conference, WTDC 14, Dubai, United Arab Emirates, 18 March. Also, the knowledge sharing and the access to grant access to everyone who has access to the internet, to everything. All countries have signed to all these agreements and resolutions, but still, we're facing many problems accessing very important websites and codes. We see a lot of these messages, like VMware, request 16, your request is blocked by the security rules. This is based on our IP address that is located in Sudan. And this one downloads the source fork, so you cannot download anything from source fork. Google developers, of course. This is one of the blocked websites. We cannot find our country name in the Apple Store. In the Apple, if you want to register in Gmail, for instance, or if you want to register in Apple, if you want to have like any account, you cannot find your country. But at the end of it, you'll just register in any other country's name, like Saudi Arabia or Egypt or whatever. So, and this of course impacted our economy, our access to the internet, our even education. It has like, students are not capable of taking exams, whether they are online exams, because there are no accredited centers, exam centers in Sudan. There are no companies, big companies like Red Hat, Microsoft. You cannot take like Microsoft certificates. You cannot take like Red Hat certificates. CCN, if you want to take a CCNA certificate, for instance, you have to travel to Egypt, to India, to Libya, to any other country that is not under this sanction. So let's just drift from this, and I'm going to start to move from this discussion to another. If you want to discuss something about this, we will come to it later. I'd like to talk about the experience of Sudan, my experience in Sudan, Isaac, and to share with you something that you could maybe take with you to your country. We have many activities in Sudan, Isaac, actually. We started, it started when we were at Sudan Isaac office. We were talking about technology issues. We were discussing. It was I and the team leader of information security at Sudan Isaac and two programmers. We were discussing about the open source versus proprietary software. It was like a 1 hour discussion. After we finished that discussion, we were just asking ourselves, why don't we take this discussion to the community? Why don't we just involve a lot of people in this discussion? Because it was very useful and very enriching and informative discussion that took place there. From that point on, the idea of technology talk, aka tech talk, emerged. And instantly we started inviting people from the private sector, civil society, academia, education universities. We invited them to join our technology talk. We held the first technology talk. It was on data privacy in Sudan and in the world. It was very successful. Many people, like, we did not expect that number of people to come to our first discussion. It was more than 100 people who came there. So I think it is very important to have such discussions in everyone's country, just to bring people together, the technology people, to have like a topic that you discuss about, to have something in common. We sit there, we decide the topic that we are going to discuss, and then we bring people who have expertise in this domain, and then we discuss everything. Everybody knows everything after that. Then we have the capacity building project. It's an ongoing project for like 2 years. This project targets mainly students from universities and from the private sector. We teach them, we give them lessons on DNS security, programming languages, open source, like Linux operating system, Windows operating system, mobile application development, CMSs that are content management systems. we give them all this system because we believe universities and the curriculum at the university does not give students like the enough knowledge and technical knowledge that enables them to go to the market in there. And the third event is the Internet Society 25th anniversary, which is going to be held in Sudan in the 25th of September. It is going to be like sponsored by the International Isaac. We have applied to be a node in this 25th anniversary. So it's an annual event, anniversary, held by Isaac, and if you are a local Isaac or national Isaac, you want to apply for this anniversary, you could be a node for the university, for the anniversary of Isaac, then you can just hold activities, make many activities in the local scale. Okay, this slide is empty. I'm going to talk about the Sudan Computer Emergency Response Team. Like I said, we have been under sanction for like many years, 15 years, even though now we have our Sudan said, our Computer Emergency Response Team that has many relationships with other countries, Arab countries, like Egypt and Tunisia, Saudi Arabia, UAE, many Arab countries and many actually countries from Asia, like we have, as you know, security has become like a cross-border issues. We cannot sit in our country and we say that we are going to solve all security problems, like it was mentioned by the professor in the previous session. So it has to be like a collaborative effort between all countries to tackle all security problems. In line with that, we have been like trying to make relationships, and we failed many times because of the sanction. For instance, I remember when we tried to join the first organization, the first, for those of you who don't know it, it's an organization responsible for the incident response for the technology incidents. So when we tried to join it at first, we were denied the access to first, but eventually we did it. We joined it after a lot of effort, of course. And that is it. If you have like any questions, discussions, suggestions, you're welcome. I think our friends from Iran shared the same burden with us.
Mahdi, which is published like 2 or 3 days ago in Iran, and I'm trying to translate lots of the information so I can share with you. But we are really suffering from sanctions, especially regarding to the application of our, startup businesses, which is stored in Apple Store. They are playing with us, if I can have time to arrange all the information, then talk about it. It's gonna. Okay, so is there any time for us to present? This is the last day for presentations. So let me to arrange everything for Friday, but I will cover some information as well. Thank you.
You want to present? Okay. Go.
Milton's been doing research on the Iran case as well, so they don't have like. Milton's been doing research on the Iran case, so you'll find a lot on the IGP website about Iran. So yeah, better check.
So you finish? I don't know. So I have a question for you. Who do you think is responsible for lifting this sanction or applying these rules? Do you agree with Fahad? Okay.
So I think it's a group of players. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, I'm not speaking on behalf of ICANN. I travel a lot within the region. I get to see countries, I get to see people. It's really a mixture. At the end of the day, it's more of a conspiracy theory. So, I mean, even if you follow politics, you would see that people who claim to be your friends behind you, I mean, they are not. So, it's really a mixture, frankly speaking. And again, I guess usually, it's like recently, they lifted some sanctions on Iran and lifted some sanctions on Sudan, but then those sanctions actually did not include technology firms. And so they still, in these countries, they still suffer from using technology from some of the big players. So it's really, and usually these OFAC and sanctions kind of classifications categorize things. So they would say sanctions in technology, sanctions in military equipment, sanctions in, so it's a big list. It's actually worth going to, I mean, go online and just write OFAC as one source, and you can see what kind of sanctions the US imposes on these countries. You will also find similar sanctions from the United Nations, so it's also another thing worth seeing.
Okay, actually, may I ask something? That is correct, actually, because the sanction has been partially lifted from Sudan. Like, we started seeing many open websites and many like online transactions, banking transactions, like partially lifted. Now we are in a period of time that we should wait, and it should be like a testing period of time. The US has given us like 3 months. After the 3 months, decision will be made as to whether to lift the sanction completely or to leave it partially or to do it like, I don't know. It has like percentage of this sanction. So if you do this, it will be lifted 30%. If you don't do this, it will be like 50%. I don't know. They have a special criteria through which they measure how to lift sanctions from countries. But we hope that it will be completely lifted. Thank you.
It's actually, I mean, we have colleagues from Iran and Sudan, and you can actually talk to them and ask them more about this whole concept of sanctions and how it's affecting their economies. It's quite interesting, actually.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So now I will be presenting to you an overview and show to you the small picture about the internet situation now in Iraq. What is happening about the internet now in Iraq? First of all, when you talk about the overview, we need to know how many ISPs in Iraq. Now in Iraq there is more than 50 ISP in Iraq, local ISPs, about 52 or 53. This is including the ISPs in Kurdistan region. The MOC, the Ministry of Communication, is the only provider of internet to the ISPs. So the ISPs in Iraq who sell the internet to companies and homes, from where they get the internet, it's only from the Ministry of Communication. So all the internet come to the Ministry of Communication and distributed to the ISPs from the Ministry of Communication, and then distributed and sold to the homes and companies. And this is not including Kurdistan region. The ISPs in Kurdistan region, they have different way to get the internet. So it's not from the Ministry of Communication. In Iraq, there is more than 14 million active internet users. Just to mention that Iraq has 35 million population, 35 million of population, and there is 14+ million of them are active on internet. And this 14 million, it's inside Iraq, not including the outside of Iraq. With all of this, we have no law of internet. We have no legislation of internet. There is no any regulations, or at least announced regulations. So when we go now to the minister, because of the Ministry of Communication are the main source of the internet. So when we go to the website, we have nothing to read about how the internet are operating in Iraq. Who's the responsible, how I can become an ISP, how can I know the internet from where, what is the rules, and how it's operating, who's responsible. There is nothing to read about how the internet is operating in Iraq. So, but because there is no legislation, the there's a council in the presidential council suggested to do a cyber crimes law in Iraq. So no one suggested to do a law to regulate or to governance the internet, but the first move it was to about the cyber crimes law. This happened in 2011. This cyber crimes law, at the first draft in 2011, it was a disaster. It has so many human rights violations, yes. So then in 2012, we did with the huge campaign, advocacy campaign, in support and help from international NGOs such as SMEX, some of you know them, and Access Now, and all of them supported the local community in Iraq to defeat this law and provoke it from the parliament. And we succeeded with this. In 2015, the parliament moved the first draft to a special committee in the parliament from several, they developed from several committees inside the parliament: education committee, defense committee, health committee, I don't know what, and education company, and the rest of the violations is still there. And in 2016, we succeeded to provoke this law from the parliament, but yet now it's not rejected. So there is a chance to bring this law again to the parliament and read it again and vote on it. But till now, from August 2016 till now, there is nothing mentioned about the law again. So this is the part of the law about the internet in Iraq. And just to mention about what kind of violations that this law have or contain. For example, if I just made a campaign or promoted for a campaign on the internet anonymously, and I got caught with it, I become a criminal, and I go to the jail for a couple of months, as if just I use the internet anonymously. Then if I get humiliated or say something bad about some politicians or religious representatives, so this will make me much than criminal. This will send me to jail for 5 years with a fine of $50,000. Some of the crimes, like opening and starting porno websites, it can send me to the jail for 25 years. And there is much more. This with the fines, of course, it's not only jail. I have to pay and more and more and more. So the law, it's still disaster even after the update. And Iraq, one of the countries that experienced internet shutdowns and sometimes some website blackout. So this is why Iraq have experienced partial blackout. The first time it was in 2014. It is not the first time, but the major one. The one that spread a lot and people start talking about it, and the media as well. When ISIS attacked Iraq, Mosul, at that time, the Iraqi government ordered to block Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to prevent people to publish anything about the invasion. So, but now at that time, people start know about the VPN, how can they across this this block. But before that and after that, there was another orders to the ISPs from the government, especially Ministry of Interior and Affairs and the Ministry of Communication, to block some websites, such as Jazeera International was blocked for a couple of years, the English site of Jazeera International, and the website of Gulf Center for Human Rights was blocked for a couple of years. Now both are open. Recently, a couple of months ago, the parliament signed and passed a law that order ISPs to block all porn websites. But yet this law, it's not operated, and no porn websites blocked yet. This is about the partial blackout, and we have total blackout. The total blackout started for the first time in 2015. At the high school final exams, the government started to shut down the internet for 3 hours a day for a long of 3 weeks. So 3 weeks from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. we don't have internet. This was in late June 2015. And for 3 weeks, from 5 to 8 a.m., we don't have internet, a total service shutdown. No 3G, no hotspots, no dial-up, nothing. No internet at all entities in all of Iraq. No, this they shut down the internet at that time in order to prevent the questions leakage. So the leakage was become before the exam, which start at 8 a.m. So they shut down the internet before the exam 3 hours to prevent the leakage. Yeah, the next year, in 2016, we have the same attitude, but the time changed from 6 to 9. So for 2 years, yes. Now I will mention this. For 2 years, 6 weeks, in the whole this year from from July 2015 till June 2016, there were 22 instances in this whole year that cost Iraq more than 209 million USD. Yes. In 2017, this year, just 1 and 2 months ago, June and July, the government felt what the wrong that they did in the past 2 years, so they reduced the amount of shutdown hours to 1 hour a day, and only in the days that there is an exam in it. So we had only 15 instances only this year, yes.
Why don't they collect the students' devices instead?
The leakage, it's happened before the students go to the schools for exam.
So they're trying to
Yeah.
shut it down just when the leaks are supposed to happen.
Yes. In order to prevent the leakage. Yeah. Yes. No, there is. Yeah, of course. Yeah, Dr. Ala.
The case is that we usually print the questions for the baccalaureate. It's the highest degree, it's 12th grade only, and the 3rd grade and the 9th grade. We call it a unified exam in whole Iraq. All the governments having the same questions. It's a baccalaureate, so it's a final degree. So they are shutting down this system in order to prevent the leakage. The leakage happens is that I am a trustee. They give me a copy of the questions at 6 a.m. and I have to take it in hand, printed to the schools, each school. So what not me, some people do that. They take a copy, they take a picture for that one and send it for X, for Y, for Z, using the
WhatsApp and Viber.
Yeah, WhatsApp, all the forms. Yeah. So if I don't have an internet at the time, even our trustee, I want to cheat, I will not be able to do so because there is no internet. The other solution is I take a copy of this and go to the person who want to get advantage of this, which is consumes time. So they find a solution for this problem. Okay, calling them. Okay, question number 1, question number 2, blah 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 blah. It's a long one.
It's it is not a solution, but it's decreased the percentage of leakage, of course. Yeah, but because it's just like it's cuffed up the whole country. There's no internet. So, for example, I want to steal something. They cuff my hands. This is the way. Okay. So, at the last, .iq. .iq again. The Ministry of Communication. It is the CCTLD in Iraq. And it is control everything, belong to the internet, again, the .iq. And they have all the regulations and the legislation that to manage and operate .iq, but it's not announced. MOC give a license for only one ISP, one of the biggest 3 ISPs in Iraq, to register the .iq for companies, NGOs, even name. But how I can know that I am eligible? I don't know. I have to go to this company, ask them, I want to register this domain. What are you? Are you an individual, company, NGO? What are you? And then the process, okay, just like investigation with the registry. So, yes, it is case by case. So they will, if I have something in a higher level in that company, even if I am eligible, I can register it if he can support or sponsor me at the company. And as I said before, there is no announced any papers or anything that people can know who is eligible or allowed to register a .iq domain, and there is no prices announced of this. So, for example, we'll see some resellers, they have contract with this ISP to register the domain. Some of them selling the domain with about $1,000. Some of them selling it with $500, and some of them selling with only $40. Which one is the real one? No one knows. So, this is the overview and the situation about internet in Iraq.
Any questions?
I was just wondering why the examiners. I have seen like similar cases in many countries, where the exam committee sit down and they print out the exam papers and they shield it in boxes. Yes, and then they deliver it to the students in the same day of the exam. So why don't you do this? Why don't you send the...
They do. And I saw myself how the Minister of Education transferred this question in a sealed bags in armored cars to the schools.
And then?
And then, which happens before this and after this. Before they put it in the armored cars and after they deliver it to the schools.
So you actually have to look at it as a process. So it comes out of the Ministry of Education, printed. And Iraq is a big country, so once it departs Baghdad, it has to go to all cities.
Yes.
Be it up north, Basra down south.
And all the deliveries happen at the same day. For example, today we have a history exam. At the same day, 4 a.m., the questions goes to the whole of Iraq, the whole of country. Dr. Ala.
Three models. We have three models, Ahmed. We have three models for the questions. So even the person who's delivering these questions doesn't know which model is the correct one. In order to prevent, the cheating. But they can find out a solution for that.
And now, are you okay with having like annual leakage and Are you okay with having the annual exam leakage from? No, I mean the country. I mean, you seem like you do have annual. You do have it annually. I mean, no people. Monthly.
Yes.
Yeah, good. Good.
Because all the exams got leaked. But the problem was, that the Minister of Education did not find a real solution for the leakage. So the government put this solution. Yes, please.
A solution maybe?
It is a solution for them, but not for the whole country. Airport shut down the services for 3 hours. The banks have no services. No money can enter Iraq for the whole 3 hours of internet shutdown. No money can get out from Iraq for 3 hours because all this money transfer and the airport systems, it works only on internet, and there is no any communication between the whole country for 3 hours over the internet.
Why don't you let all high schools do their own exams?
It's a different story. The Minister of Education have to change the whole exam system. Yes, please, Adam.
Buy every high school a printer and just send the...
This is the solution I suggested to the minister.
Email the questions 15 minutes.
Exactly. This is the same solution I suggested to the minister, and the answer later came that this will cost Iraq this huge amount of money, but no one figured that the shutdown cost Iraq it's $209 million.
So we have a question from Sukal.
Yes.
I wanted just to mention your CCTLD has a nice meaning .iq.
Yes.
Maybe the people over there are so smart because they find lots of ways to leak data leakage. I mean, regarding to exams. So it makes sense to have .iq and then, just this.
Yes, thank you, Muhammad. Actually, we have the same case in Libya.
Yes, Libya, Algeria as well.
Yes, regarding but the point is how to govern this issue, how to overcome this problem. What we did, actually, we didn't that. A guy came to the court and sued the Ministry of Education because they have released a decree for forcing the Ministry of Communication to shut down the internet. And this guy was running a company dealing with telemedicine. And he told them that I will sue you for every second you shut down the internet, because this will cause a lot of problems for my patients, because he's dealing with the doctors all around the world, and he's acquiring opinions, second opinions for his customers and etc. So they refused to pass this this resolution, and we are here. I mean, you might prevent such a case there in Iraq as well.
I just want to share another country's exercise, what they do, South Korea, when I was there. And I experienced that. I don't know how they distribute it, but professors are literally underground for 2 to 3 days while making that. And after the examination, they will be coming out. They would be resided any place no one knows, and they make the papers, hand over to the authorities. They don't have any access to outside world until till the time the exam is over. So this was practiced in South Korea, that they are undergrounding the professors during the making of paper and during the exam time.
So actually in Jordan we have a similar case, but we do it differently. So actually what the government does is that they shut voice over IP services and all these instant messaging services. Unfortunately, I do a lot of calls on Skype. I end up spending a lot of money on my phone that month, simply because I can't do Skype calls, and I just end up doing phone calls. There was actually this report that was issued a couple of months ago on the cost of internet shutdowns in different countries. It's actually worth reading. If I find it somewhere, I'll probably share it with you. You can send it to the group. Please send it to the mailing list. It's becoming a trend, it seems to be. So Algeria is moving in the same steps. There are other countries in the region that are moving in the same steps. So you spoke about this guy who tried to sue the ministry. So again, it differs from a country to another. So in my country, you can't sue the government. In Jordan, so I'm from Jordan, you can't sue the government. So whatever the telecom people do, that's something you have to take. I think I don't think there is a one model that fits all, because at the end of the day, you have to look at the culture of that country. I guess every country has different cultures. I remember I used to study in the States in 2006, 2007. And literally when it was exam time, the professor would tell us, you have your books in front of you, do whatever you want. He would leave the room, there's nobody to monitor the students, and everybody is just looking at his paper and his answer sheet. Nobody's cheating from nobody. But if you come to Jordan, for example, even with a professor or a teacher and a couple of other people who are watching the room, you will still find people actually cheating. So I think it's a mindset. I think it all boils down to what you were taught and how you were taught and who taught you and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, there is no one size that fits all, I guess. One last presentation, maybe? So we'll have one last presentation before we call it a day. You have slides? Yeah, you can put it on that laptop. So that's the phone. Do you want to stand? You can use this.
Well, I wanted to present something about history of internet in Afghanistan, but I thought it would be better to present a subject that is interest of me, and this subject is actually the reason why I entered internet governance. Women's rights, gender, and internet governance from Afghanistan perspective. Gender and women's rights feature in internet governance in multiple ways, multiple things like access, content, and representation. When speaking of access, there is a noticeable inverse proportionality and the movement against the digital divide. For example, in Afghanistan, in a country with pronounced gender discrimination, that the proportionality of men's access and access of men to the internet as the access of men to the internet increases, the percentage of women who has no access or has limited access to internet remains steady. But often the proportionality of the increased access for women and violence against women or women online or directly. There is a direct proportionality between these two. In today's world, information and communication technology is the key drivers of a country's education, economy, and health. The right to communicate is very important to developing politically, socially, and economically. So the internet also needs to be a public thing, and we need to know the value of public things. The internet should also be a public thing with open content and access as a right. And the women must also have a contribution to the decision making and public policy on the internet and information and communication technology. The question that why should women be interested in these topics, and what does the world of virtual communication has to do with women's rights, and these questions are common, and especially in some countries for some people that we should answer to them. We have to convince them that internet can be very helpful in the lives of women, and it can have important impact to the life of women in different ways, even to those women who live far away from the center of the city and the outlying regions. For example, it can be useful for them to use mobile phones and use some mobile applications during their pregnancy, or to have some information for childcare or anything, as they are living far away from the town, and they might not have access to a hospital, or they can't visit their doctors regularly. They can make contact with their doctors, or maybe there might be many applications so that they can track their medicines and advices, anything. In Afghanistan, women rights activists have recognized the power of tools and platforms on internet. As a few months ago, an application called Mahfazat that a group of girls developed and implemented an application that can be of help to women to avoid street harassment. The idea was from the young girls. They developed it by themselves. They implemented by themselves, and this is an example that through the internet they can improve their life. They can avoid. They can find solution to many of their problems. So and technological paradigm assumptions about users' realities, institutional configurations, policy priorities, and all these things, women should have an active role in order to respond to women's diverse knowledge, realities, and needs. They should have active contribution to these things. So taking control of technology, it's a responsibility for women, at least for us in Afghanistan, because taking the control, or at least have some role to take part and to have contribution in the leading ICT sector of Afghanistan, so that they can shape the technology and take benefit of internet for themselves. We should develop tools and resources for fostering a gender analysis of ICT projects and policies, like gender and ICT policy advocacy, violence against women and ICTs, gender evaluations, and research in ICT trainings and capacity building. There are many examples of women activists who work in this area. One of those are Roya Mahbub. I don't know if anyone knows her. She is an activist in technology who helped other Afghan girls to be involved in technology and take part in development of the country. As a few weeks ago, she had the responsibility of training the robotic team of the robotic girls from Afghanistan, and helped them to attend the competition which was held in US, yeah, in America. And fortunately, they took the third position, I think. I'm sorry. There is a video, there are many examples of such activists who work for improvement of women in technology in Afghanistan. The end of online violence against women online can contribute to end violence against women and our real life today. We have to, if we want to end this violence against women in our today's life, we have to end violence against women online, because we can defend our rights through social media and through internet very easily. Girls can have blogs, can express their opinions on social media, can talk about their rights on maybe TVs. You can upload videos about what they want. There are many ways. So we need to strengthen the capacity of women's rights activists and organizations who work in this area to use technology tools in their work, and also they have to they have to respond to the growing incidence of technology-related violence against women. These violence can be cyber-stalking, surveillance, unauthorized use and manipulation of personal information. Like the common issue in Afghanistan is like the women don't always use their real identity in social media, or even in the announcers on the TV channels. They use their fake names. They don't upload their real photos on social media. Because the reason might be they're afraid of people. If they can't express their opinions openly, they can't comment on a post openly. If they express their opinion by a fake account, or comment on a post by a fake account, they can do it easily, because the identity and the name they have presented us are not themselves, and no one can do anything with them, with that fake identity. So there is the only way they think of is using fake names and don't uploading their profile pictures, things like this. In Afghanistan, there is not any policies, regulations, or services that respond to the policies, regulations, or services that respond to these new forms of violence, or if exist, they are not adequate. So preventing technology-related violence against women is an important component in ending the violence against women in real life. Cyber-stalking, it has been defined as main following or contacting women despite her clear disinterest. You may know these things, so I have to finish it. According to Ministry of Information and Communication Technology of Afghanistan, there are 2.7 million internet users in Afghanistan, from out of which 1.7 million of them has access to social media like Facebook, Twitter, other social medias, and only 10% of those users are women, out of which 1% women use their real identity in social media, like their real name, real profile pictures. And I told about the reason before. Well, the reason can be lack of knowledge among the people. I don't think the reason can be the culture, religion. No, it's about the lack of knowledge, and because they're afraid of being treated by anyone who are opposite of their opinions. There are some solutions for social media and platforms who do violence against women online. So I have to finish it. Okay, I will skip. For governments, yeah, I know you all know these things. So thank you. Mr. Fahd asked to finish, and I finished it.
Any question? It was great, thank you.
So a question to you. Do you use your real name or Okay, you don't have to answer.
No, I use my real name.
Use a shortcut.
I use a shortcut. No, I used to. My name was Nuria Ahmadi, but unfortunately I faced some challenges and I changed it to N Ahmadi.
Okay, a quick question. First of all, thank you very much for your presentation. I am really, really impressed. And it was inspirational in many ways. For example, you talked about an application called Muhafezat to help women to avoid street harassment. I think this is a very common problem in many countries, even in the developed countries. We have in Turkey the same problems. We can benefit from it. What kind? If you can give information about it, I will be happy. Thank you.
Well, actually, it was a USAID program. Yeah, a project from USAID that was they were calling for applications from young Afghan girls who has a solution for this problem. And many Afghan girls who had great ideas, they applied, and one of those ideas got succeeded, and they developed it and implemented by themselves. I'm not sure of the success because it has been very short time since it has started to being implemented. I think it's something like in a mobile application when a girl or a woman face harassment in any location, they just fill the form. They enter the type of harassment, their location, and I think it might be connected to some police officers, and or maybe they are like what they say, like they are counting how many harassments are in which location, so that they can hire more officers there to avoid such problems, or more awareness, or they might guide people. I don't know what they do with those reports, but they are recording the reports. Yeah, like the name of location, type of harassment, and I hope it gets success.
Well, about the last thing, I'm going to ask something else, but it's probably very important to collect that data for future research, because a big thing is not all of most of things like this aren't being reported, so it can't be addressed properly. You said there aren't many laws that address these, but even when there is, and I think it's a global problem, not, I mean, from region it changes, but even when there is a law, there's, Yeah, the harassment, the cyber stalking, cyberbullying, and even in the real world, consequences of it. How does the law enforcement take it? I mean, there's one thing for having it in the law, but another thing to have it enforced. Do they take it seriously? Like,
well, I see that there is no regulation in Afghanistan who actually take the responsibility or take actions for those kinds of complaints. Sorry, there's no regulation, and if someone go to police or to complain about some like I go to police, then that person is treating me because the comment I wrote and his post. Police won't take any action. This is because they don't know what to do. There is no law. There is no regulation. So there must be so that they take action based on that law. Yeah.
Thank you.
The problem is that there is no regulations, and we have.
Forget about regulations. Women around the place can gather.
Well, this is what Afghan women doing since when, yeah. So finished. Thank you.
Sorry, I have just one question. Number of women who are using internet in your country is equal to the men, or?
No, of course not, because
10%. You mentioned
10%, because in Afghanistan only in capital and some other provinces the woman has access to internet. Most of women do not use it, or they don't have the permission to use. Some like in a country that has passed many years of war, the people has some different mindset about using internet. As they have studied a bit that in internet we can find different types of. It can be beneficial, it can be not. And they think they might not be benefit to their girls or women.